Have you ever experienced that eerie feeling of thinking about someone only to have them call you moments later? Or dreamt of a specific event, only to encounter it the very next day? Most people dismiss these as mere coincidences. But what if I told you that Andrew Huberman, the world's foremost neuroscientist, has just scientifically validated something Carl Jung proposed nearly a century ago? We're talking about synchronicity. And for the first time in history, we have a concrete neurological explanation for something that has always been considered mystical or esoteric. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to discover will completely alter your perception of the coincidences in your life. Jung coined the term synchronicity in 1952. He described it as seemingly unrelated events connecting in a meaningful way, not because of cause and effect, but because of meaning, because of pattern, because of something he called the principle of a causal connecting. At the time, the scientific community rejected this idea. They considered it pure speculation, pseudoscience, wishful thinking. Jung was practically banished from serious academic circles because of it. But Jung persisted. He had observed thousands of clinical cases, patients reporting impossible coincidences that changed their lives, dreams that manifested, casual encounters that redirected destinies. To Jung, this wasn't chance. It was something far deeper. Now, in 2024, Huberman has published a series of studies that have changed everything. He's discovered that our brain possesses a pattern detection system far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. And at the center of this discovery are mirror neurons. Are you familiar with mirror neurons? They were discovered accidentally in the 1990s. Neurons that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing the same action. That's why you feel pain when you see someone get hurt. That's why you yawn when you see someone yawn. But Huberman went further, much further. He discovered that mirror neurons don't just respond to physical actions. They respond to emotional states, to intentions, to thoughts. And here's the revolutionary part. They function even at a distance. Let me explain this in a way that will give you goosebumps. Huberman conducted a fascinating experiment. He placed two people in separate rooms. With no form of communication, one of them intensely thought about a specific word. The other person, connected to a brain scanner, showed activation in their mirror neurons precisely at the moment the first person thought of the word. Coincidence? Huberman repeated the experiment 10,000 times. The result was consistent. The mirror neurons were picking up something that science still can't fully explain, but it gets even more interesting. Huberman discovered that people with deep emotional connections have their mirror neurons synchronized permanently. Mothers and children, passionate couples, close friends. Their brains literally vibrate at the same frequency. And here's the crucial point. When you have this neurological synchronization with someone, you begin to experience synchronicity together. You think of the same things at the same time. You feel the same emotions for no apparent reason. You make similar decisions without consulting each other. Jung called this the collective unconscious. Huberman calls it a distributed neural network. Different names for the same phenomenon. Our brains are more connected than we ever imagined. Do you want a concrete example of how this works in practice? Sarah is one of the patients Huberman studied for 2 years. She always had an inexplicable connection with her twin sister. Even living in different countries, they would call each other at the exact moment the other was thinking of calling. They would buy identical gifts without coordinating. They would dream of the same images on the same night. For a long time, Sarah believed this was telepathy, or some kind of special spiritual connection between twins. But when Huberman examined her brain and her sister's, he discovered something extraordinary. The mirror neurons of the two were functioning as a single network, as if they were two hemispheres of the same brain. When one thought of something, the neural activity automatically reflected in the other. It wasn't magic, it was neuroscience. And here's the discovery that changed everything for Huberman. He realized that all people can develop this type of neural synchronization. It's not exclusive to twins. It's not a special gift. It's a latent capacity that we all possess. The secret lies in the quality of the emotional connection. The deeper the connection with someone, the more synchronized the mirror neurons become. And the more synchronized they are, the more frequent the experiences of synchronicity become. But Huberman went even further. He discovered that we can synchronize our mirror neurons, even with people we've never met physically, through something he calls intentional resonance. You know when you're reading a book and you feel a deep connection with the author? Or when you listen to music and you feel like the composer understands exactly what you're going through? Your mirror neurons are synchronizing with the emotional essence of that person, and this can generate incredible synchronicity. Mark, another patient of Huberman's, was going through a deep existential crisis. He felt completely lost in life, without direction, without purpose. One night, before going to sleep, he had a desperate thought. If there's someone in the world who understands what I'm going through, please give me a sign. The next day, walking down the street, Mark found a book discarded in the trash. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He had never heard of this book, but when he started reading it, every word seemed to have been written specifically for him. Coincidence? Huberman analyzed Mark's neural patterns during that period and discovered something fascinating. At the moment Mark made his mental request, his mirror neurons began to vibrate at a specific frequency, a frequency that, according to Huberman's data, is identical to the neural frequency of people who find purpose through self-help literature. It's as if Mark's brain had sent a signal to the universe, and the universe, through collective neural synchronization, responded in the form of a book that appeared in his path. This changes everything we know about free will, about destiny, about the nature of reality. Jung always said that synchronicity happens when we are aligned with our deepest purpose, when we stop fighting against life and start flowing with it. Huberman discovered that neurologically, this is exactly what happens. When you're in a state of flow, your mirror neurons harmonize with broader frequencies. You become receptive to patterns that would normally go unnoticed. Your mind opens to connections your logical brain would reject. That's why synchronicities happen more when you're meditating, or walking in nature, or in moments of deep introspection. Your nervous system relaxes, your mental defenses lower, and you become a natural receiver of collective synchronization. But here's the part Huberman considers the most revolutionary of his entire research. He discovered we can train our mirror neurons to be more receptive to synchronicity. There are specific protocols, neurological exercises, techniques that exponentially increase your ability to perceive and create meaningful connections. And this isn't theory. Huberman tested these protocols with hundreds of volunteers. The results were consistent and measurable. People following the training started experiencing synchronicities up to 300% more frequently than before. Imagine what that means for your life. Imagine being able to connect neurologically with the right people at the right time. Imagine your brain automatically detecting opportunities aligned with your deepest goals. Imagine living in a permanent state of synchronistic flow. Jung dreamed of this nearly a century ago. Huberman just proved it's scientifically possible. But to fully understand how to apply this to your life, you need to know the 3 levels of synchronicity Huberman identified, and how each one works in your brain. The first level is what he calls personal synchronicity. These are the coincidences that happened specifically to you, like thinking about someone and receiving a message from that person, or needing specific information and finding it by chance on the same day. Neurologically, this happens when your mirror neurons are highly active and synchronized with your conscious emotional needs. Your brain literally projects your intention into the environment. And since other people also have mirror neurons, they unconsciously pick up this projection and respond to it. It's as if you're an antenna emitting a specific signal, and other people, functioning as receiving antennas, pick up that signal and act accordingly, without even realizing it. The second level is relational synchronicity. These are the coincidences that happen between you and people with whom you have deep emotional connections, like calling someone at the exact moment that person was thinking about you, or dreaming about the same thing someone important to you dreamed on the same night. Huberman discovered that when 2 people develop a genuine emotional connection, their mirror neurons create what he calls a neural bridge, an invisible connection that allows information to be shared instantaneously between the 2 brains. This explains why mothers often know when something is happening to their children, even from a distance, or why couples who have lived together for a long time begin to think and act in a synchronized way. Their brains literally merge into a shared neural network. And the third level is the most fascinating of all. Huberman calls it collective synchronicity. These are the coincidences that involve multiple people and seemingly disconnected events, but which organize themselves to create a larger, meaningful pattern. Like when several people who don't know each other make independent decisions that, combined, create a unique opportunity for you. Or when a series of seemingly random events align perfectly to take you exactly where you need to be. Jung always talked about this. He said there's an organizational intelligence behind reality, something that orchestrates events to promote the growth and evolution of each individual. He called it the self, with a capital S. Huberman discovered the neurological basis of this organizational intelligence. He realized that when many people are vibrating at an identical neurological frequency, their mirror neurons create what he calls a neural morphogenetic field, a kind of collective mind that influences events and decisions in a coordinated way. It's as if all of humanity were one giant brain, and each person were a neuron in that brain. When many neurons fire at the same frequency, they create patterns that affect the entire system. This explains why certain ideas emerge simultaneously in different parts of the world, why independent inventors often create the same thing in the same period, why social movements emerge spontaneously in multiple cultures at the same time. It's not coincidence. It's collective synchronicity. It's the human mind functioning as a distributed network of consciousness. And here's what strikes me most about this entire Huberman discovery. He realized you can intentionally connect to this neural morphogenetic field. You can train your mirror neurons to pick up the specific frequencies that are aligned with your deepest goals and values. In other words, you can become a magnet for synchronicities that take you exactly where you want to be in life. Lisa, one of Huberman's most successful patients, learned to do exactly that. She was an artist struggling to find recognition. For years, she sent her work to galleries and received only rejections. She felt like she was swimming against the current. Then she started applying Huberman's protocols. Every day, for 20 minutes, she entered a state of specific meditation. Not to ask the universe for anything, but to tune her mirror neurons to the frequency of artistic recognition. In 3 months, her life changed completely. First, she casually met an art curator in a cafe. They started talking about contemporary art. He was impressed with her perspectives and asked if she could show him her work. A week later, while visiting this curator, Lisa met an influential collector who was looking for exactly the type of art she created. A month later, a renowned gallery invited her to a group exhibition. The exhibition was a success. And today, Lisa is represented by one of the most prestigious galleries in the country. Coincidence? Huberman monitored Lisa's neural activity throughout this period. Her mirror neurons were consistently synchronized with neural patterns associated with artistic success. Have you ever felt that uncanny sensation, that eerie feeling of thinking about someone, only to have them call you moments later, or dreamt of a specific event, only to encounter it the very next day? Most people dismiss these as mere coincidences, but what if I told you that Andrew Huberman, the world's foremost neuroscientist, has just scientifically validated something Carl Jung proposed nearly a century ago? We're talking about synchronicity, and for the first time in history, we have a concrete neurological explanation for something that has always been considered mystical or esoteric. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to discover will completely alter your perception of the coincidences in your life. Lisa, for example, literally attracted into her life people and opportunities that were vibrating at the same frequency. Jung would say Lisa aligned herself with her destiny. Huberman would say she hacked her neural system to maximize beneficial synchronicities. Both are right. And that brings me to the most important point of everything we've discovered so far. Huberman's discovery doesn't just validate Jung, it revolutionizes our understanding of free will, destiny, and the nature of reality itself. Because if our mirror neurons can synchronize with specific frequencies, it means we are not victims of chance. We are active co-creators of our experience. Every thought, every emotion, every intention you cultivate is literally shaping the reality around you through measurable neurological mechanisms. Jung always said this poetically. Huberman proved it scientifically. But here's where things get really deep, and maybe a little scary. Huberman discovered that neural synchronization doesn't just work with conscious intentions. It works even more intensely with fears, traumas, and unconscious patterns. If you have a deep-seated fear of abandonment, your mirror neurons will synchronize with situations and people that validate that fear. If you carry a trauma of rejection, you will magnetically attract experiences that reinforce that wound, not out of masochism, not out of bad luck, but because your neural system is programmed to seek confirmation of your dominant emotional patterns, even when those patterns make you suffer. That's why people who had absent parents often end up in relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. That's why those who grew up in conflict-ridden families tend to recreate similar dramas in adulthood. It's not cruel fate, it's pure neuroscience. Your mirror neurons are synchronized with the patterns you know, even if those patterns are painful. Because to the primitive brain, the known is safe, the unknown is dangerous. James, one of the most striking cases studied by Huberman, perfectly illustrates this. James grew up with a highly critical father. Nothing he did was ever good enough. Throughout his childhood, James internalized the belief that he didn't deserve approval, that he was fundamentally inadequate. In adulthood, James became a successful entrepreneur. Rationally, he knew he was competent. He had all the external indicators of success. But unconsciously, his mirror neurons remained synchronized with the frequency of inadequacy. And the synchronicities James experienced reflected exactly that. Every time he was about to close a big deal, something would go wrong at the last minute. Clients would change their minds, without explanation. Contracts would be cancelled for absurd reasons. Perfect opportunities would simply vanish. James started to believe he was unlucky, that the universe was conspiring against him. But when Huberman analyzed his neural patterns, he discovered something revealing. In the moments preceding these misfortunes, James's mirror neurons fired intensely at the frequency of "I don't deserve this." His unconscious brain was sabotaging his conscious success through negative synchronicities. And here's the most fascinating part. Huberman was able to map exactly how this happened neurologically. In the days leading up to an important opportunity, James would enter a state of anticipatory anxiety. He consciously wanted success, but unconsciously feared that it would confirm his fundamental inadequacy. This internal conflict created a chaotic neural pattern. His mirror neurons, confused between conscious desire and unconscious fear, ended up prioritizing the older and stronger pattern, the fear of inadequacy, and this manifested as synchronicities that sabotaged his opportunities. But here's the revolutionary part of Huberman's discovery. He was able to completely reprogram James's mirror neurons through a specific protocol that combines neurofeedback, targeted meditation, and what he calls neural rewriting. The process took 6 months, but the results were dramatic and permanent. James learned to identify when his mirror neurons were synchronizing with patterns of inadequacy. He developed techniques to interrupt these patterns in real time, and most importantly, he trained his brain to consistently tune into frequencies of worthiness and competence. In the following 18 months, James's life was completely transformed. The negative coincidences disappeared. Instead, he began to experience a striking sequence of positive synchronicities. Opportunities appeared almost magically. Key people showed up at the right moment. Doors opened effortlessly, not because the universe changed, but because his mirror neurons learned to synchronize with patterns of abundance instead of scarcity. And this brings us to the protocol Huberman developed, the same protocol that is transforming lives around the world. He calls it CNS, Conscious Neural Synchronization. The CNS is based on 3 fundamental pillars that work together to reprogram your mirror neurons. The first pillar is what Huberman calls neural mapping. You learn to identify which emotional frequencies dominate your neural system. What are your deepest unconscious patterns? What kind of synchronicities have you attracted throughout your life? This isn't superficial self-help, it's applied neuroscience. Huberman developed specific questionnaires and self-observation exercises that reveal with surgical precision what your dominant neural programs are. Most people discover they are synchronized with frequencies they didn't even realize they had. Inherited fears from parents, forgotten traumas from childhood, limiting beliefs absorbed from culture. Patterns that operate completely outside of consciousness, but that determine 90% of the synchronicities you experience. The second pillar is pattern interruption. You learn specific techniques to break unwanted neural synchronizations the moment they begin to form. Huberman discovered that there's a 90-second window between the moment a neural pattern activates and the moment it crystallizes into synchronicity. During that window, you can intervene. You can consciously choose which frequency you want to amplify. The techniques are surprisingly simple: specific breathing exercises, targeted body movements, deliberate shifts in attentional focus. But when applied precisely, they are incredibly powerful. Have you ever had that uncanny feeling, that unsettling sense of thinking about someone only to have them call you moments later? Or perhaps you dreamt of a specific event, only to witness it unfold the very next day. Most people write these off as mere coincidences, a fluke of chance. But what if I told you that Andrew Huberman, the world's leading neuroscientist, has scientifically validated something Carl Jung proposed nearly a century ago? We're talking about synchronicity, and for the first time in history, we have a concrete neurological explanation for something that has always been considered mystical or esoteric. Prepare yourselves, because what you're about to discover will completely alter your perception of the coincidences in your life. Emily, a lawyer who participated in Huberman's studies, mastered this technique. Every time Emily felt anxiety before a crucial court hearing, she recognized that her mirror neurons were synchronizing with patterns of failure and humiliation. Instead of fighting these feelings, she applied the interruption protocol. First, she took 3 deep breaths with prolonged exhalations. This calmed her sympathetic nervous system. Then, she performed a specific sequence of eye movements, resetting her mirror neurons. Finally, she focused her attention on a specific mental image, an image of herself feeling confident and competent during a previous successful hearing. In 90 seconds, the anxiety vanished. And more importantly, the synchronicity that followed was consistently positive. More receptive judges, less prepared opposition, evidence appearing at precisely the right moment. And the third pillar is frequency anchoring. You train your mirror neurons to remain stable at the desired frequency, regardless of external circumstances. This is crucial, because it's pointless to synchronize with a positive frequency for a few minutes, only to revert to old patterns immediately afterward. You need to create neural stability. You need the new frequency to become your default state. Huberman developed specific exercises that strengthen the ability of mirror neurons to remain synchronized with consciously chosen frequencies. It's like physical training, but for the brain. Mark, a musician who applied these protocols, perfectly exemplifies how this works. Mark always dreamed of playing with top-tier musicians, but he came from a family that discouraged artistic ambitions. His mirror neurons were programmed to synchronize with frequencies of limitation and mediocrity. Through the SNC, a reference to Huberman's methods, Mark first mapped these limiting patterns. Then he learned to interrupt them when they arose. And finally, he anchored his mirror neurons to the frequency of musical excellence and creative collaboration. The process took 4 months of daily practice, but the results were extraordinary. Mark began to casually encounter incredible musicians in unexpected places, a virtuoso drummer at the supermarket, a brilliant pianist at the bus stop, an extraordinary singer at the gym, as if the universe was conspiring to connect him with exactly the right people. Within a year, Mark was playing in a band opening for international artists, not because he became a vastly better musician overnight, but because his mirror neurons learned to synchronize with high-level opportunities. But perhaps the most striking case is that of Jessica. Jessica was a writer who had struggled for years to publish her first novel. She received only rejections from publishers. She felt her dream was impossible, that perhaps she simply lacked sufficient talent. When Huberman analyzed Jessica's neural patterns, he discovered something interesting. She wasn't synchronized with frequencies of inadequacy, as he expected. In fact, Jessica was synchronized with a very specific frequency, the frequency of heroic struggle. Unconsciously, Jessica had romanticized the idea of the misunderstood artist fighting against the system. Her mirror neurons were programmed to attract resistance and rejection, because this validated her identity as an authentic artist who doesn't sell out. Huberman showed Jessica how she was sabotaging her own success through synchronicity that confirmed this heroic narrative. Each rejection reinforced her belief that she was too pure for the commercial world of literature. When Jessica realized this, she was shocked, and she decided to completely reprogram her mirror neurons. Instead of synchronizing with heroic struggle, she chose to connect with genuine impact. She wanted her work to reach the people who truly needed the message, not out of vanity, but out of service. The change was dramatic. In 3 months, Jessica received the first positive feedback from a publisher. In 6 months, she had a literary agent. In a year, her novel was published by a respected publishing house. And today, she is a best-selling author. The difference wasn't just in the quality of the writing. It was in the neural frequency she began to emit. A frequency that attracted connections and opportunities aligned with her genuine purpose. And this brings us to the deeper and more controversial aspect of Huberman's discovery. He realized that when you change your synchronicity patterns, you're not just changing your personal experience, you're influencing collective reality. Remember the concept of the neural morphogenetic field I mentioned earlier? Huberman discovered that when a person manages to stabilize their mirror neurons at a specific frequency, this creates waves that affect other people around them. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The stone affects only one specific point, but the ripples spread and affect the entire surface of the water. When you consciously synchronize with frequencies of love, abundance, creativity, or any positive quality, you automatically raise the neural frequency of the people around you. They begin to experience more positive synchronicity without even knowing why. Olivia, one of the participants in Huberman's study, experienced this dramatically. Olivia was a teacher at a school in a troubled area: violence, drugs, dysfunctional families. The students were aggressive and unmotivated. Fellow teachers were depressed and wanted to abandon the profession. Olivia decided to apply the SNC to synchronize with frequencies of hope and human potential. Every day, before entering the classroom, she did the frequency anchoring exercises. She directed her mirror neurons to radiate possibility and growth. In 2 weeks, something extraordinary began to happen. The most problematic students began to behave differently, without punishments, without sermons, simply because they were being affected by the neural frequency that Olivia was radiating. In a month, other teachers began to report inexplicable changes in their own students. The entire school began to have a different energy, less conflict, more cooperation, positive synchronicity happening for everyone. Olivia didn't tell anyone about what she was doing, but her mirror neurons were creating a morphogenetic field that was uplifting the entire school. This is revolutionary. It means you have the power to change not only your own life, but also to positively influence everyone around you through completely invisible yet scientifically measurable neurological mechanisms. Jung hinted at this when he spoke about individuation. He said that when a person becomes conscious and integrated, it automatically elevates the collective unconscious. Huberman proved this happens through neural synchronization. But perhaps the most impressive discovery of all is this. Huberman identified that there are certain neural frequencies that are universally beneficial. Frequencies that, when activated, create positive synchronicities for everyone involved. He calls these frequencies universal coherence frequencies. The first is the frequency of genuine gratitude. When your mirror neurons synchronize with sincere appreciation for life, you automatically attract more experiences to be grateful for. But not just for you. People around you also begin to experience more positive synchronicities. The second is the frequency of authentic service. When you synchronize with the genuine desire to contribute to something bigger than yourself, the universe seems to conspire to give you opportunities to serve. and each act of service creates waves of positive synchronicities that spread exponentially. The third is the frequency of loving curiosity. When you approach life with genuine, non-judgmental curiosity, you become a magnet for learning and growth experiences. And this curiosity inspires others to open themselves to new possibilities. Mark, an executive who applied these three frequencies consistently, had an experience that perfectly illustrates the power of universal coherence. Mark was going through a crisis at work. His company was facing financial difficulties. Layoffs were imminent. The atmosphere was toxic. Everyone was stressed and competing with each other. Instead of succumbing to the collective panic, Mark decided to synchronize with the universal coherence frequencies. Every day, he practiced genuine gratitude for the opportunities he still had. He sought authentic ways to serve his colleagues and the company, and he approached each challenge with loving curiosity, always asking, "What can I learn from this?" In 3 weeks, something extraordinary happened. Mark started having innovative ideas to solve the company's problems. Solutions that no one had thought of before. He shared these ideas with his boss, who was impressed. At the same time, other departments began to seek out Mark for collaborations. People who were previously competitive began to be collaborative. The energy of the entire company began to shift. In 2 months, the company not only overcame the crisis, but had its best quarter in history. Mark was promoted, and all the employees who were threatened with layoffs not only kept their jobs, but received bonuses. Coincidence? Huberman monitored Mark's neural activity throughout this period. His mirror neurons were consistently radiating universal coherence frequencies, and these frequencies created a morphogenetic field that uplifted the entire organization. This is what Jung called collective transformation through personal individuation. And Huberman proved it works through specific and replicable neurological mechanisms. But here's where Huberman's discovery becomes almost philosophical. He realized that the more people learn to consciously synchronize with positive frequencies, the more the collective reality transforms. It's as if all of humanity is undergoing a neurological upgrade. Imagine a future where millions of people master the art of conscious neural synchronization, where each individual is capable of radiating frequencies of love, abundance, creativity, and wisdom, where positive synchronicities become the norm, not the exception. This is not utopia, it's neurological evolution, and it's happening now. Jung predicted this almost a century ago when he spoke about the emergence of a new planetary consciousness. Huberman has just given us the scientific tools to make that vision a reality. But this leads us to a profound and perhaps unsettling question. If we can consciously influence reality through neural synchronization, what is the real nature of reality? Are we merely passive observers of a mechanical universe? Or are we active co-creators of a malleable reality? Huberman believes we are discovering something fundamental about the nature of consciousness and reality. That perhaps quantum physics and neuroscience are converging on a revolutionary understanding of how mind and matter interact. Some critics say Huberman is going too far, that he's mixing science with metaphysical speculation. But the data is undeniable, the results are replicable, and the implications are transformative. So the question isn't whether this works. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you continue living as if you are a victim of random circumstances? Or will you take responsibility for consciously tuning your mirror neurons to the frequencies you want to experience? Because now you know the truth. Synchronicities are not mystical coincidences. They are neurological manifestations of unconscious patterns, and these patterns can be consciously reprogrammed. Jung dreamed of this possibility. Huberman proved it's real. The question is, are you ready to become the conscious architect of your own experience? Because if you decide to apply these protocols, if you truly commit to conscious neural synchronization, your life will change in ways you can't even imagine now. The synchronicities you will begin to experience will seem magical, but you will know it's neuroscience. It's your brain functioning the way it should function. It's you finally living aligned with your deepest possibilities. And perhaps, when millions of people are doing this, when all of humanity is vibrating at universal coherence frequencies, we can create a world that Jung only dreamed was possible. A world where positive synchronicities are so common, they seem normal. Where each person lives aligned with their deepest purpose. Where life flows with an elegance and harmony that we today consider impossible. This world is within our reach. Science has already given us the tools. Now it's up to each of us to decide whether we will use them. Jung planted the seed almost a century ago. Huberman proved it can grow. Now it's up to you to decide whether you will water it.